we'll have our next speaker, Dr. Felaka Schweiter.
Thank you. I'm trying to get used to the bearing here. This is the first time I'm actually having a virtual conference and actually being physical and not having anybody to kind of fuel my energy off. Anyway, thank you very much for that introduction. Anyway, let's get into it. So why are we here? Dr. Gabriel set a very good stage and gave us a good context to be able to build on what we want to achieve today in this conference. But I'd like to start by asking all of us a rhetorical question, which is, or before you even ask the question, what is my topic today? Yvonne said to me that she would like me to speak on how you can future-proof your business and your career to stay ahead. And the topic I decided to speak on in addressing that topic is called the evolution of the modern woman adapting in a dynamic workplace. So to kick that off, my question to all of us this afternoon is, where will your job matter in 5 years? This is a question I need all of us to think about. I'm sure you don't have the answer today, but what you're doing today, will it matter in 5 years? Would you be adding the same value in 5 years? Do you have the skills that is required to ensure that you're relevant in whatever it is you do, whether as an entrepreneur or as a career person in 5 years? Okay. Now let's look at data and what data says and what the trend has also shown over time. So 10 years before now, what did we have? What are the sort of things we had? We had the sort of leadership that was hierarchical. But today, 10 years after, we have flattened structure. We have fixed working hours 10 years before. But today, what do we have? We have flexible working hours as opposed to having that fixed working hours that we had before. We have what we call the fear-based leadership style. But what do we have today? Leadership style is more empowering. It's more collaborative. It's different. 10 years before now, you had to be on site. You had to store your information on site. There was nothing compared to you having information in the cloud like we have it today. We have smarter working tools versus just having email as a work tool. Now, I'm going to show that trend 10 years before now has shown that today, reality has changed. And if you look at October 2019 and October 2020, the disruption has even shown us even more that the future is going to be different. So January this year, there was no way I could have a meeting with all my stakeholders in the same place. They always had to travel from either Port Harcourt or from Abuja. But today, all of us know that we can have a meeting in your house, in your office, and everybody's there and it's more effective. What are the things that has made this happen? These are some of the things you need to think about as you think about your career, as you think about your job, as you think about your business. Now, I'd like to speak about some of the biases that are real even today as women. Dr. Gabriel says that we shouldn't think about it as a limitation, but they're real. And I like to use data to show some of those things. So in the workplace over time, what we've seen between 2015 and 2020 is women are more in the, if you look at the difference between women and men in lower roles. We have about 40-something% of women in the lower and entry-level roles. But as you get higher to the C-suite level, and you get higher to board levels, you see that women, the number of women represented in those positions are in the 20% range. And that is the reality today, regardless of the skill, regardless of the expertise that women have. And that is the reality. The truth is that in Nigeria today, Nigeria ranks 128 out of 153 countries that have that gender gap in terms of career for women. And only 20% of women own their businesses in formal sector, 20%. So on the higher level in the career is about 20%. In owning businesses that are thriving is 20%. And of course, at the director level, it's 12%. That is our reality. It's not a bias, it is reality, and data has backed that up. Now let's go to the entrepreneurs and the people that own businesses. You see that there's several companies owned by women who contribute significantly to economic growth. We have companies like House of Tara, we have companies like Rough and Tumble, we have Ebony Life, we have Futures FT, we have Flying Doctors Nigeria. And these businesses are doing extremely well, and they're run by women. Now, what does McKinsey say? The report from McKinsey says that Africa could potentially add 1 trillion or 34% to its collective GDP by 2025 if women and men play identical roles in the labor market. So fact shows that when women are given the opportunity, they do extremely well and their businesses do extremely well. But in reality, we're still a minority in that space. Now, despite the increase in the number of women that own businesses, there's still a number of challenges that face us as a result of this gender and cultural biases that I mentioned. And I'd just like to speak through some of them. So the first one, which is this gender inequality. Despite the policies, despite the laws that are in place, the issue of discrimination is still real. That's the truth. And whether we like it or not, it's important that we know that it's there. But I'm taking my time to go through some of these issues so that we are aware of what we are faced with as women. When you understand what you are faced with as a woman, then it makes it easier for you to understand what you need to do to ensure that you succeed in this economy and in this world. The second thing is, as a woman, the truth is that you have to learn to balance responsibilities. Now, demands from the home front are real. Women are the ones that get pregnant. Women are the ones that are going to carry the babies. Women have a responsibility to nurture. You can't run away from that responsibility. It is your reality. So it's better you understand it. It's better we know it and we understand the implication on us trying to achieve our objective as successful career women and successful entrepreneurs. The third one is limited access to funding. Data shows that women struggle with being able to access funds that same men with same capabilities are able to access, simply because of these biases that they are women. So you have the capability, you have the expertise, you have the profile, but it's still difficult for you to get this loan or access this fund simply because you're a woman. That is a fact. That's a reality. Data buttresses it. Societal discrimination. In Africa, in Nigeria, even though it's getting better, the reality is that it is there. Now, for example, when I go for meetings, I'm in the power sector and I'm in a male-dominated sector. When I go to a meeting with a colleague of mine that is male, almost always they reach out to the man first, thinking that he is the one that is my boss. That's my reality. Can I change it? Can I influence that? I can't influence them. I cannot determine how they think. But it is our reality, and we must know that. And the reason why I felt it's important that I really speak to this today and just show us what it means is so that once you know that this is what it is, once you understand that they're going to look at you as a woman, they're going to be snooty to you, they're going to look down at you, it doesn't affect you anymore. You're not taking it personal. You just understand that that is your reality. The last one is inadequate mentorship. The truth is that there is still inadequate mentorship for women. There's a lot being done, but it's still inadequate for women and our job. And one of the reasons why, one, I believe with nobody here. I'm speaking to an empty room. It's because I'm already kind of used to having these virtual meetings in my house. That's why I can do it, because usually I like to feed my energy off people that I'm seeing, but I've had to adapt. So remote working is one of the changes that came about. Flexible working hours. With the easing of the lockdown, what we saw was that it was critical for people to be able to work flexible hours. And that is now the reality. So people can decide that, I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock to drive to the office because it's inefficient. But they're working with flexi hours. They can decide that they want to work from 10 to 8 o'clock. And we're still achieving the objective. That's the reality. Pay incentives cuts. So as a fallout of this pandemic, businesses saw that there were a lot of monies being lost. And what they decided to introduce are things that are called pay incentive cuts, whereby you reduce the cost of transportation to your staff, and then you add it to the cost of them being able to connect remotely or being able to work remotely, and to reduce your cost. So the businesses are looking at their bottom line, and they're coming up with ways to ensure that they can still achieve their objective by reducing their cost. Employee well-being is something that has become critical at this time. Now, globally, for you to even access certain types of funds, one of the criteria is, what sort of organization do you run? How are your organizations? What is their mindset? What are your staff's well-being state? How do you take it seriously? It's something that is now being seen as a criteria to access certain things. So organizations, because of these disruptions, are taking that serious as well. And of course, redundancy. There was an increase in redundancy and a restructuring of the workforce. The House of Reps went as far as introduce the emergency economic stimulus bill to provide the tax breaks to employers who retained all the employees during this period. Now, the truth is that even though these changes happened, when I go back to data and what the reports show, remember that women already had constraints as the fact that you're a woman, based on the biases I spoke to you earlier on. But after what happened with COVID-19 and there were reduction in job cuts, women were most hit as well. So data shows that female job loss rates due to this pandemic were about 1.8 times more than men. That means that it's higher than my male counterpart. Remember that based on the stats I shared earlier on, women already are in the minority. So even when there was a disruption, women were hit most. Again, another reality that we have. 4.5% of women's employment is at risk in the pandemic globally, compared with 3.8% of men's employment who already had an advantage over women. Now, so thinking about all that the women has to face and the women have to deal with, I then began to thinking about the question I asked earlier on. What do I need to do to be relevant in today's world and in the world in future? Let's look at what data is saying or what the stats are saying. As the job landscape is evolving, women need to be prepared to take on roles in emerging sectors, and they we must upskill accordingly. So 2022, the report that I looked at with Future of Jobs report in 2018, it showed what sort of skills are growing. So in 2022, the sort of skills that will be growing are financial analysts, digital marketing and strategy specialists, AI and machine learning specialists, data analysts and scientists, business development professionals, Internet of Things specialties, the business services and business administration officers, project managers, process automation specialists, lawyers, financial analysts. These are sort of skills that will be growing towards 2022. But what sort of skills are declining? What is the data showing? The sort of skills that are declining right now are administrative and executive secretaries, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll clerks, data entry clerks, relationship managers, legal secretaries, management and organizational skills, and so forth. Now, those are skills that are growing and skills that are declining. Now, let me link that with emerging jobs, emerging roles based on the change that is happening even as a result of this pandemic. And some of those top emerging roles are data analytics and scientists as well, which is clear based on the skills I said need to be growing, big data specialists, general and operation managers, AI and machine learning specialists, new technology specialists, digital transformation specialists, organization development specialists, information technology services. These are the emerging roles. And you can see that there's a link with the emerging skills. Now, what intrigued me was the diminishing and the declining roles. Now, these declining roles are not going to be eradicated totally. But what happens is that the need for it will go down. And if the need for it is going to go down, it's important that you know what are those declining roles. And how does that align with where I am today and my skill or your skill? So we have jobs like, or roles like data entry clerks. Those roles are diminishing. Accounting and bookkeeping payroll clerks. Administrative and executive secretaries. Assembly and factory workers. And those are the roles that women are more today. And those roles are even diminishing. Because of time, I won't go through all the list of jobs that I have here. So for me, seeing our reality, understanding our biases, seeing the skills that are going to be required in the future that I just read out. How prepared are we? How prepared are you? What is your skill level today? What is the role you're playing today? Will you be relevant in 5 years like I asked you? So how can we continue to stay relevant and ensure that we can future-proof our career and our businesses? The first one I would like to speak about is the need for us to develop a growth mindset. A growth mindset, in other words, you should believe that with effort and perseverance and drive, you can overcome any obstacle. You must not have a fixed mindset. So all the things I have said today, they are not challenges. They are opportunities to help you determine what you need to do to be relevant now and in the future. So we must all have a growth mindset. The second thing that we must have as women is we must develop resilience and we must understand our purpose. Resilience can only be developed if you know what it means to fail. Now, a lot of people do not want to fail. A lot of people do not like to fail, but you can only build capacity or competence when you fail because you fail to get up. You fail to get up and you learn from the things that made you fail. And that's how you develop resilience. Resilience is critical to anyone that needs to succeed today and in the future. You must be a resilient person and you must understand purpose. Purpose is something that we can spend the whole day speaking about. Every single person is created uniquely for a reason. You must understand what is your purpose. Why am I here? It can't be because of you. So, for example, I'm the acting CEO of Ikeja Electric. That is just a job or a title. There are skills, there are things that people have that is in me, there are things I've learned over years. It can't just be for me to be able to say I'm a CEO. It must be for me to be able to make a difference in the organization I'm in, to be able to make an impact in the lives of the people that work with me. Because I understand my purpose, my CEO platform has given me the opportunity to achieve that purpose. So every single human being, women especially, must understand their purpose. Critical, you must know the skill gaps that you have. And you must understand the skill gap that is required, or the skill that is required to be relevant to achieve your purpose and to be relevant in the business world or in your career. And you must be proactive in developing those skills. And the truth is that developing skills, there's so many opportunities for you to be able to develop the skills that you need at this time. Another one is that we must remain savvy, tech savvy, tech survey. Critical. All the skills I mentioned, all the upcoming and emerging roles I mentioned, you can see that they get towards AI, Internet of Things. That is the future. You cannot ignore it. If you are aware of where you are today, you must develop your ability to be tech savvy. Critical is for you to build your personal network. You must develop a personal network because there's nobody on an island. You're learning from people. You're learning from people's mistakes. You're learning from people's experiences. And you're leveraging on the opportunity that the relationship gives you. And of course, lastly, you must think global. You cannot think local. Some of the data I shared today are data that is not just Africa-based or Nigeria-based, it's global-based. And we can see the impact even on Nigeria. So you must think global, you must plan global, and you must work towards ensuring that you are global. So with some of these things I have just shared today, my question to you, now that we understand our reality as women and the constraints and the biases that are there for us, and the skills I have mentioned that you need to upskill, and the opportunities that lies ahead as a business person or as a career person, will your job still matter 5 years from now? In fact, 5 years is going far. 2 years from now, will your job still matter? Don't wait till tomorrow to start to build the skills for the future. Start today. Start today. There are free courses. There are free opportunities online. I'm not an advocate of free, but there are opportunities, but you need to be deliberate about what you need to do. You need to be clear about what you want to achieve. And you need to make sure that the constraints I mentioned earlier on is not a hindrance to you. The time there to build your skills is now. The time there to build your skill is now. Thank you very much.